Hey there, homie. Are you still playing that two-card Texas poker? Living in the shadow of 2002 while you fold for hours so you can eventually win a $30 pot? Let me ask you a question. Do you have no regard for the value of a dollar? Are you tired of having a roof over your head? Do you enjoy pain? If so, have I got the drug for you? PLO, that's Pot Limit Omaha. It's the game of the future.
Hello and welcome to my first poker vlog. My name is Anthony. I've been playing Pot Limit Omaha cash games for a living since September 2019 when I quit my job. And I've primarily played live limits from 1-2 all the way up to 1025. Unfortunately, here in the Tampa area, none of the local poker rooms allow you to do any footage. So recently I've started playing online. And those are stakes of 3-6, 5-10, and 10-20. And that's allowed me to capture some footage and produce some content for everyone here. So I'm going to be doing that. I'm going to show you not only deep stack play, but also short stack play as well, and go through hand histories and my thought process as I break things down. So I hope this is helpful. I know a lot of people have been looking for PLO content out there. There's Donkfish Poker. Andrew Nemeth started producing some, but there isn't a lot of PLO content out there. So I wanted to throw my hat in the ring and share some of my insight. I hope you enjoy it. Let's get started. In this hand, we have a dead small blind, and we are under the gun five-handed with ace, king, queen, four double suited. The majority of time, I think I should be raising here. In this instance, I wind up limping. I believe my intention was that these players are pretty aggressive. The stacks, for the most part, are pretty shallow, except for myself and one other opponent. And so I'm expecting someone to possibly raise, and I can limp repot here. Unfortunately, that isn't the case. And I do think that I made a mistake. I should be raising in this spot five-handed with a hand this strong. But in this instance, I limp, and let's see what happens. We go three ways to a flop of King 8 Deuce Rainbow. This is a nice flop for us because our opponent shouldn't have hands that connect well with this flop, considering that we already have the king, so no one raised pre-flop. We shouldn't be running into top set here, and it's difficult, not impossible, but we shouldn't be running into, King 8, King Deuce. It's not impossible for someone to have those in their hands, but three-handed here, we have not only top pair, top kicker, we have the backdoor wheel draw, we have the backdoor Broadway draw, and we have two backdoor flush draws. So three ways here. I believe this is a clear bet, and that's what we're going to do. Our opponent calling our flop pot-sized bet is concerning. We could be running into a set of eights or a set of deuces here. It's possible our opponent also flopped two pair and we've just outdrawn them on the turn. But still, I'm going to check in this spot, and the reason being that, one, I want my opponent to think that the ace didn't help me, so that he might think his two pair or his one pair he could have been calling with, king queen, king jack, king 10 on that flop, hoping to two pair on the turn. So in those instances, I want to check for pot control in the instances where I'm beat, and at the same point I want to check because I want to induce my opponent to bet with hands that I'm ahead of. So I'm going to limit my losses when I'm behind, and I'm going to try to maximize the profit I make off of my opponent when I'm ahead. The 8 pairing the river means there's only one possible combination of 8s that our opponent could have, and so we're really only concerned here about him having flopped a set of deuces or having continued post-flop with an 8 in his hand. For that reason, we're going to check because he bet the previous street. We want him to continue betting when we are ahead and allow him to value own himself. And we want to, again, check and allow him to bet so that we can just call for the instances where we're running into a cooler. So unfortunately, we lose this hand on the river, but the good points here are that we got our opponent on the flop to call a pot-sized bet when we were 72% equity. And on the turn, when we're 95% equity, we got him to make a pot-sized bet. So we're maximizing our profits on both of those streets. And on the river, when we are outdrawn, we're limiting our losses by checking and allowing him to bet rather than betting and getting raised. So I'm pretty happy with how I play this hand, except for, pre-flop, I feel like I should be raising. I don't think that's going to change anything. Our opponent's hand was strong enough five-handed that he's going to continue if I raise pre-flop, and he's going to continue probably on that turn when he makes two pair as well. So unfortunately, you can't control the rivers. Sometimes your opponents are going to have 5% equity, and sometimes they're going to get there. We start this hand under the gun with ace, ace, 9, 3, with three clubs in our hand. And while we do have aces, aces in PLO are a lot different than aces pre-flop in No Limit Hold'em. If you have aces versus kings in Hold'em, you're roughly an 80% favorite equity-wise. In PLO, a lot of times you might only be 60 to 65%. Sometimes you're going to be a veritable coin flip against other hands. And these aces are not premium aces. The ace 3 work together to make a straight, but you're never going to make a nut straight with that hand. If the flop is 2-4-5, you still lose to 3-6. So you've got a 9 in your hand, which is a dangler. It's not connecting with any of the other cards to make any straights. And you've got 3 clubs, so you're blocking yourself from making your flush. So you want to proceed with caution here, especially where we're under the gun, we're deep stacked. There's a number of other deep stacks in the table as well. So we're going to limp in. We really want to see either our flush cards or an ace, and that's pretty much it. So we're fortunate here that we go 6 ways to a flop and we hit our ace on a fairly safe board. The ace deuce 6 board is good because a lot of players are going to be playing higher cards or middle cards. A lot of players don't play the low cards. Obviously, if someone has 3, 4, 5, 5 with a flush draw as well, they're going to have 45% equity against our hand here, so they're not in bad shape. But generally speaking, this is a relatively safe flop. What's also nice is we don't have any hearts in our hand. So that means when we bet here, the players that call are most likely going to be chasing flushes. So it allows us to narrow down the ranges of hands that we're facing and allows us to kind of know how to proceed depending on, the turn card or the river card. Now here you could check because we are in early position. There's a lot of opponents, and a lot of players are going to bet their flush draws. Someone might have a set of sixes, and they might think they need to protect their hand, and so they might bet, and then you could limp re-raise here, or check, check and repot. But in this instance, I'm a big fan of betting your own hand, and so that's what I'm going to do. The front door flush comes in and facing one opponent here who's relatively deep stacked like ourselves, and we're out of position. Our only option really here is to check. We don't want to bet, get raised, and have to call when we're behind. When we have decent equity with our set, we still have a chance to win this pot, and so we can check here and we can call a reasonably sized bet. So we're going to check and see what happens. We river this straight, but it's relatively meaningless. If our set of aces was good on the turn, it's still going to be good on the river, obviously the straight being the same, so they both pretty much cancel each other out. If our opponent has a flush, we weren't going to win unless the board paired, so making the straight doesn't change that. Now, it's interesting that our opponent did check on the turn when theoretically their most likely hand should be a flush draw on this spot. They didn't bet the turn. Now a lot of players might do that with weaker flushes, so you might think maybe I can push them out if I bet big on the river. and get them to fold a weak flush. But the problem here is that we didn't bet the turn. We didn't, we bet the flop, but we didn't continue betting the turn when the flush came in. So it's going to be hard for us to sell the story that we have a flush. So us betting here is really, I think, spew. So we're going to check and, hope to get to showdown and see what transpires. So somehow, despite the horrible run out, we managed to pull this pot. The extra hard on the river is helpful in the sense that it makes it less likely our opponent could have a flush because that's one less card they'll have in their hand. But at the same time, they really should be having a flush draw here. The only thing I can think of that our opponent might have that they continued with post-flop might be a strange two pair, six deuce, deuce, ace six. But us having two of the aces in our hand makes them having the ace less likely. So it's really hard. I mean, you could look at maybe they had a straight draw, but if they had a straight draw, they should have had the same straight as us, unless they had, the 4-5 and they were chasing a gut shot, which some players will do. You'll have players chasing straight draws on flush draw boards, which you shouldn't do, but that's why the game is so profitable. All right, so in this hand, we're under the gun. We've got the ace, king, 9-3 double suited. Now, if we were deeper stacked, I wouldn't want to be playing this from under the gun in an aggressive game because if someone raises, it's going to put you in a difficult position. If the game is deeper stacked, if you're playing deeper stacked and your opponents are deeper stacked, I'd prefer to play a hand like this from a later position. Obviously, the suited ace is nice. The suited king is nice. The 9 isn't doing you a lot of favors. It doesn't connect to make straights with the other cards. Obviously, the ace and the 3 work together. The ace and the king work together. And the double suitedness is nice. But in this hand, we only have 15 big blinds. So we're really looking here. We're going to limp in and we're going to hope that either someone behind us raises so that we can limp repot and get it in, or we're fine if we limp in and a bunch of people limp in and we can see it flop multi-way and either flop the nuts or flop a draw to the nuts and get it in, just because of our stack size. So as you can see, we've gotten what we wanted. We limped in, an aggressive player has raised, and now we have an opportunity on our short stack to get the stacks in. We're not really going to have any tough decision points here. Our hand equity-wise should be in good shape as far as, unless we're running into someone who has aces or kings here, which is unlikely because we have blockers to both. We're never really in bad shape. We've got 2 flush draws, we've got a few different straight draw possibilities, and we obviously have some high card strength as well. So again, when you're short stacked in a spot like this, it's fine to get it in, and obviously you're not going to be a huge favorite, but you're usually not going to be in bad shape either. So when you look at the equities of these two hands, you can see we're a slight favorite. We dominate our opponent's only suit because he's only got the jack high diamonds, we've got the king high diamonds, so we're winning there. And we dominate his ace. We have the ace king versus his ace jack. His hand does have better straight connectivity, which gives him some strength, but as you can see, equities and PLO run very close pre-flop, but we do have a slight edge here. There's a little bit of dead money, and on a short stack, again, we're fine getting it in and rolling the dice. We're in the small blind and we're dealt ace, ace, deuce, 3 with 3 spades. There's a couple of limbers before a player in middle position who's pretty loose and aggressive raises to $33. A relatively solid player in the cutoff calls, and then a loose player on the button calls. Now the action's back on us. So in this spot, we're all, most of us are relatively deep, including myself. If I repot here, it's going to be to about $180, give or take. And the problem with that is that it doesn't create a low stack to pot ratio where, if the three guys that are in for 33 all call, you're looking at roughly $700-ish in the pot going to the flop, but we still have significant amount of money beyond that still left to play. And not only that, but we also have not great aces. The deuce 3 doesn't help us all that much unless we hit some miracle ace 4-5 flop. We block our own flush draw by having 3 spades in our hand. So this is a hand where, based on stack sizes and our position, I don't want to tip my hand and give away that I have the aces, so I'm just going to call here. And obviously, if someone else winds up raising and then there's some other callers, now we can consider getting it in with some dead money and maybe pushing some players out. And I'm fine going, up against 1 or 2 hands here. But against the field, I really don't want to bloat the pot and play a big pot out of position where my hand is pretty much half a hand with just these aces. So we're going to call and see what happens. We go 5 ways to a flop of ace, king, 7 rainbow. Now what's really nice about this is that not only have we hit top set, but we've also got the backdoor spade draw, and someone else was a pre-flop raiser here, so it's likely that if we check, someone is going to step on the gas here and try to take the pot down. It's possible the pre-flop raiser might have pocket kings, which would be fantastic because we're going to be a huge favorite. They're going to have one out unless they've got some other type of backdoor draw or a Broadway draw. So in this instance where we're in the small blind and we're facing 4 other opponents and someone else has been the pre-flop aggressor, I'm going to check here and I'm going to be looking to check raise. So this is a really nice result. The short stack is shoved all in for $164, and the original pre-flop raiser has just cold called. Now it folds back to us. And with him having still 1100 behind, I don't want to just call here out of position, because if he has a hand that has, Queen Jack 10 in it, he's got decent equity to hit the Broadway draw, and I don't want to let him hit that without charging him to do so. And if he has pocket kings and he's trying to get cute and he's flopped a set, he's going to pay off here more than likely. So for that reason, I'm going to check raise and I'm ready to play for stacks here. And if he folds, that's fine too, because now we have an extra $164 in the pot of dead money. And I only have to beat the guy who shoved, and obviously right now I have the nuts. I also don't want to let the guy who has 1100 behind continue to see a turn that gives him, a club or a diamond where he picks up a flush draw, some additional equity, and then he gets stacks in and then he hits it. So again, we're going to check raise and let's go. This is a fantastic result. We've got it in for stacks with dead money in the pot as a 92% favorite. Our opponent has a little bit under 8% equity, and that's what's really nice about PLO. You can get people in spots where you're a monster favorite where they're drawing virtually dead. But don't get it twisted. This game will give you heartburn. I have lost as a 97.5% favorite with 1 card to come against a 1-outer to a player who only runs 1 time. And I've also lost to that same player to Runner as a 96% favorite where he was drawing virtually dead on the flop. So even though you can get people in spots where you're, 70, 80, 90% equity, they still have equity. So don't count the chips until that river card hits. And that's going to wrap up this first episode. I appreciate you tuning in. I appreciate any comments you may have, questions. Feel free to leave them down below. I will be answering them, and I will also take some and answer them in my next video. In addition, you'll have noticed a Poker Chip Forum logo throughout the video. Now, they are not a sponsor of mine. They're not affiliated with the online site I play at. They're just a community that I've been a part of for many years now. I've met a lot of wonderful people, and I also, when I started my journey playing poker for a living, I started a thread in the forums there. It's over 180 pages now, but I'll leave the link in the description down below just in case you want to check that out and get some history over the past, 2.5 years, give or take, that I've been doing this. So anyway, again, feel free to leave any comments, questions, and I'll answer them. And until next time, we'll see you on the felt.